It started with 4 business-class tickets to Maui charged to my credit card. Not mine, of course. I wasn't one of the travelers. I was simply the financier. The name Silas M. did not appear on the passenger list. Only Caleb B., Cashin B., Sandra M., and William M., my brother-in-law, sister, mother, and father. They didn't ask for permission. They assumed, as always, that I would foot the bill. I had just come off a 12-hour shift, still in scrubs, and covered in the kind of sweat only adrenaline and fluorescent hospital lights could conjure. The moment my phone vibrated and I saw the charge, my heart stopped for a beat, not because of the money, but because of the pattern. This wasn't the first time, nor the second. It had been happening for years, drip by financial drip, as if I were a well they could endlessly draw from. The transactions weren't just monetary, they were emotional thefts, each one more violating than the last. My mother had said it casually earlier that week over speakerphone, while I was still charting notes and sipping from a lukewarm cup of vending machine coffee. "Flights are $1,200 each," she said. "If you can't afford it, maybe sit this one out." She didn't say it cruelly, at least not overtly. It was just her tone, a blend of indifference and entitlement. The kind that assumes you'll always be there, even while telling you that you're not really part of the we. She said everyone deserved this vacation. Everyone. As if I hadn't worked overtime shifts to help them pay their bills. As if I hadn't skipped my own rent payment once to cover Dad's medical deductible. As if I hadn't wired $2,500 to Lyra when Cashin lost his job in sales and their landlord was threatening eviction. I said nothing, just nodded, and returned to work like the dutiful son they expected me to be. But something shifted when I saw the names on the ticket receipt. I hadn't even been granted a window seat in their fantasy, let alone a roll. I sat at my desk, eyes glued to the screen, and I felt my hands go cold. Then, calmly and methodically, I selected Dispute All, froze the account, and locked the card. One action, one line in the sand. The next hour passed in a fog. I brushed my teeth like a machine, preparing for a sleep I knew wouldn't come. And then, another notification, Lyra. "Why is nothing paid for? We're at check-in." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "What you said, that was it." I stayed behind. Not in the shameful, rejected way they imagined, but in a reclaiming, rebirth sort of way. I booked my own trip, quiet, modest mine. I didn't know anyone an explanation. Certainly not them. My father came pounding on my door a few days later, still wearing his Hawaiian shirt like a badge of leisure. The entitlement in his knock said everything. "Silas," he barked. "Open the door. We need to talk." I didn't. I watched through the peephole as he stood there, shifting between frustration and confusion, unable to understand why his walking ATM had suddenly gone offline. 7 minutes. That's how long he knocked. I timed it. Then he left. I saved every voicemail that followed. Not for nostalgia, no, for evidence. Because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was done gaslighting myself. It hadn't started with the plane tickets. That was just the crescendo. The real story began years ago when Lyra borrowed my credit card to buy a dress for her engagement party. A $600 emergency because you don't dress up anyway, Silas, so what's the big deal? She said she'd pay me back by month's end. She didn't. Then came Dad's request. Co-sign a home renovation loan for resale value. Spoiler alert. The home was refinanced to bail out Cashin's second failed business. I became the financial net under their circus act. Working 50-plus hours a week, paying down student loans, driving a beat-up car with 119,000 miles. I was the responsible one, the unmarried one, the nurse, the easy target. They mistook my kindness for infinite capacity. It wasn't just about money. It was about what they felt entitled to extract from me in exchange for being allowed to call myself part of this family. I once asked Mom to bring soup when I caught pneumonia from working double shifts during flu season. She said, "I promised Lyra I'd babysit while she got her nails done. You understand." I always understood. When Cashin crashed my car, my insurance premiums doubled. He shrugged and said, "That's what insurance is for." They boiled me slowly, emotionally, financially, like a frog in water. By the time I noticed the heat, I was already cooked. The breaking point came in a text from Lyra. "Can you move your payday up? Mom wants to book hotels and we're short." I wasn't even invited. "Short for what?" I asked. She replied with a series of emojis. Palm trees, dancers, hibiscus. I called Mom. "Lyra said you needed help with hotels?" I tried to keep my voice even. "Oh, sweetie," she replied. "It's all booked. We just needed a cushion to upgrade to business class. You know how bad Cashin's knees are." I was speechless. I wasn't part of the trip. They wanted me to fund their comfort. "Silas, if you wanted to come, you should have said something," she added. "But flights are $1,200 each. If you can't afford that." Her voice trailed into false sympathy. I hung up and said nothing. I was done. For years, I rationed medications and skipped meals to help them maintain a lifestyle that excluded me. That night, I sat at my desk, spreadsheet open, checking account at $327, student debt still looming. Meanwhile, Cashin toasted champagne in first class on my dime. Lyra dared to text me from the airport. "Why is nothing paid for?" That was the moment the mask fell. I realized they were never confused. They knew exactly what they were doing. They'd simply convinced me it was love. I booked a trip for myself using my own new card and miles I had never used. A modest beachside Airbnb. A hammock. Silence. And no guilt. When Dad returned from Maui, he knocked again. I didn't open. Mom called. "You really hurt your father. He flew back early just to talk. After all we've done for you." I saved that voicemail too. Then Lyra texted, "Grow up. You can't punish the whole family over one misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. As if I was making a mountain out of the mountain they'd buried me under. They thought this was just a tantrum. They thought I'd cool down and come crawling back, just like every other time. They mistook my silence for surrender. But they didn't understand the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awakened. I had clarity, not rage. And I had receipts. So I did what no good son is supposed to do. I wrote an invoice. $600. Lyra's engagement dress. $2,500. Emergency loan to Lyra and Cashin. $800. Dad's deductible. $420. Mom's forgotten groceries. $1,200 X4. Unauthorized business class flights. $150. Interest and late fees. Total. $7,870. Then I drafted a group email. Subject: reimbursement request for unauthorized charges and prior financial support. Dear family. Attached is a breakdown of financial support provided over the past 24 months. In alignment with your repeated assertion that family supports one another, I am requesting full reimbursement within 30 business days. Beyond that, I will file a formal dispute with my credit provider and pursue legal channels if necessary. Moving forward, no financial interactions are authorized. This is a boundary, not a debate. Silas. They exploded. Lyra, are you serious? Who invoices family? Mom. This is cruel and unnecessary. We raised you better. Dad. You're embarrassing us. To that I replied, you didn't raise me. I supported myself while acting as a safety net for your recklessness. I'm just asking for balance. Then I blocked Lyra. They didn't stop. Dad showed up again, this time with Mom. I opened the door, finally. They brought paper trails, emotional blackmail, and a script they expected me to follow. You need to talk to us, Mom said. This invoice, this whole thing, it's not who you are. It's exactly who I am, I replied. Just someone who's finally done bleeding for people who never noticed the wounds. Dad snapped. You think shutting us out makes you strong? No, I said. It makes me free. And I shut the door. The door clicked behind me, not with rage, but with resolve. I didn't slam it. I didn't shout. I simply closed it with the deliberate motion of someone who had rehearsed that moment 1,000 times in their mind but had finally found the courage to follow through. There was no follow-up knock. Just silence. Not peace, at least not yet, but a clearing. a space in which I could finally hear myself think. For weeks, the silence lingered. A strange, almost surgical absence. No more daily check-ins about financial favors. No late-night crises only I could solve. My phone stayed quiet. I thought they had finally accepted it, that I was done. But as with all things involving manipulation, the silence was only the beginning of the next act. Then came the panic. It started when my bank contacted me about an attempted transaction using my frozen credit card. Someone had tried to rent a car in Maui. It didn't take long to guess who it was. Cashin. The man with bottomless excuses and bankrupt ventures had once again tried to access my financial identity as if it were an extension of his own. I contacted the fraud department immediately. They confirmed the attempted charge and emailed me a full report. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't. Not yet. But I asked them to compile everything. Subject line: evidence for escalation. I had learned by then that silence is not the same as surrender. It's just preparation. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. We're stranded. Are you really going to leave your family like this after all we've done for you? Lyra. Of course. I stared at the message for a long time. What had they done for me truly besides take? I didn't reply. I screenshotted it instead and filed it into a new digital folder I titled Family Patterns I Won't Repeat. And then something unexpected happened. A message popped up on Facebook. From Marissa. Yes, that Marissa, Cashin's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken since before their divorce. I remembered her as the only one in that family orbit who ever seemed grounded. Sharp, no nonsense, a lawyer with bite. She'd moved across the country years ago, wisely escaping the vortex of chaos that was life with Cashin. Her message was short. Hey Silas. Sorry to intrude like this, but we should talk. I replied cautiously, assuming she'd heard rumors or just wanted to clear old air. Instead, she sent a PDF. No explanation, just a document. When I opened it, the weight of its contents sat on my chest like a stone. There were screenshots of bank transfers, emails, and chat logs, evidence that Cashin had been draining funds from a joint family emergency account that Mom and Dad had created years ago. Supposedly meant for urgent situations, it had become Cashin's personal ATM, and he had gambled away nearly $18,000 in crypto over a period of 8 months. It wasn't just that. There were emails from Mom begging Marissa not to say anything. One from Dad saying, "We'll fix this. Silas doesn't need to know." They knew. They all knew. They'd been bleeding me dry not just because they needed help, but because they were trying to cover up Cashin's mess, to avoid the shame of yet another family failure. The plane tickets, the rental car, the hotel upgrades, it was all just the tip of the iceberg. I wasn't a son in their eyes. I was a financial firewall, a human savings account. I called Marissa. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, measured. "I wasn't sure you'd even want to talk," she said. "But I couldn't keep watching from the sidelines. I know what it's like to be used by them. And I figured, finally, someone's doing what I should have done years ago. Walk away." We spoke for nearly an hour. She sent me more files, emails, bank statements, even texts from Dad acknowledging Cashin's misuse of funds. That night, I printed everything, punched holes in the stack, and clipped them into a thick binder. Then I slept with the window open and no fear curling in my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't dream of bills or guilt. The next day, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Dad. His voice, for the first time, was not angry, just low. "Warren. Silas, I don't know what to say. Your mother's sick with stress. Lyra hasn't eaten. Cashin's not doing well. We made mistakes, sure, but you've made your point. I'm asking man to man. Can we please talk?" I didn't reply. Instead, I resent the invoice. This time, I added the Marissa packet as an annex labeled "Further Context." I copied Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, and, just for balance, sent an anonymous version to Dad's HR department. 2 days later, I got an alert. Dad was no longer listed on the company website. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, separated, done. Meanwhile, my life quietly began to flourish. I I started seeing a therapist in person, walked every Sunday morning, bought a used bike, tried making meals from actual recipes.
Even met zwemmen.
Her name was Leah. She worked in the hospital cafeteria and had an easy kind of smile. She didn't know my story when we met, and when I told her, she didn't blink or pity me. She just reached for my hand and said, "I'm proud of you for surviving without letting it turn you cold." She was the first person who didn't require me to suffer for her approval. One afternoon, we were sitting on my couch, mapping out hiking trails for the weekend. She pointed at one and said, "Wanna go?" For the first time in years, I didn't have to check my bank balance. I just said, "Yes." Then came the letter. No return address. I recognized the handwriting, Lyra's. 5 pages of half apology, half emotional manipulation. "We all make mistakes. Mom cries every day. You've turned your back on blood." But the final line stuck with me. "We're still family. Nothing changes that." And I realized, she was right. That's what made it hurt more. A stranger hadn't done this to me. Family did. I folded the letter and filed it atop Marissa's binder. Then I locked the drawer. On the eve of my birthday, a card arrived. No return name, just 3 words inside. "I see you, Marissa." And I smiled, not because I felt triumphant, but because I felt seen. Fully. Finally. Months passed. I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. I stopped flinching when someone said, "Family." I stopped carrying weight that wasn't mine. One morning, I bumped into my mother. Total accident, quiet cafe downtown. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Not just in size but in energy. Her voice was gentle. "Can we sit?" We did. She talked. Not an apology, just rebranded regret. "We didn't know what you were carrying. We were just trying to hold things together." No mention of the fraud. No mention of Cashin's theft. No ownership of the years of emotional labor I had provided. Then came the expected line, "Do you hate us now?" I didn't flinch.
No.
"But I don't owe you anything anymore." She blinked, then said, inside the envelope, a check. $7,870. No note, no apology, just a transaction, a closing balance. I didn't cash it, not right away. I pinned it to the wall above my desk beneath a printed quote. "You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Eventually, I cashed the check and donated every cent to a scholarship fund for student nurses supporting their families while in school. Because someone out there is still like I was 5 years ago, drowning silently. They need to know they're not alone. Marissa later confirmed she'd sent everything to the state's fraud office and a family law attorney. Cashin was under investigation. Turns out, he hadn't just used my card. He'd siphoned money from Mom and Dad's retirement accounts. When Dad tried calling again, I let it go to voicemail. "You've embarrassed us. Family isn't a transaction. You'll regret this." No, I thought. Family was a transaction. It just had always been one-sided. And I was done paying. Leah and I are planning to move in together this fall. No guilt. No secrets. No debts. Just space. Love. Truth. And what about that door I closed? It's still closed. The key is in my pocket. And it's staying there. Sometimes, I still hear echoes. Not voices, not regrets, but memories. The soft hum of my old phone buzzing with requests. The hollow sound of promises made and never kept. The strained tone of my mother saying, "We did our best." I don't erase them. I don't deny they happened. I just don't answer anymore. The past isn't a prison, but I no longer visit it looking for keys. I still get the occasional email from an old cousin or a distant relative trying to reconnect. I reply once kindly with a boundary, then never again. Some people think forgiveness means reunion. I don't. Forgiveness is freedom, and mine doesn't require me to unlock that door. These days, my life is simple, intentional. I work, I rest, I hike, I cook. Leah and I adopted a cat named Clover, who likes warm laps and ignores everyone else. It feels poetic. Our weekends are filled with small, sacred rituals. Pancakes on Sundays, long walks without talking, shared silence that feels like safety. We're building something, and there's no room in it for shame disguised as obligation. Every now and then I open that drawer, where Lyra's letter and Marissa's evidence still sit. I don't do it out of pain but to remember, not to punish them but to remind myself what happened mattered. It wasn't just money. It was dignity. It was identity, and I reclaimed both. Once, I thought closure would come as a grand apology. Tears, guilt, maybe a family dinner where they all finally understood. But real closure came the day I realized. They may never understand, and I don't need them to. I only needed to understand myself. And now I do. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just gone. Gone from their systems of taking. Gone from their cycles of guilt. Gone from the expectation that love must always cost me something. I'm still a son. Still a brother. But no longer their lifeblood. No longer their bailout plan. I am Silas. Whole. Unbought. Unbroken. And finally, home.